Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm Regional Vice President for Fusion Alliance, and I'm also our Executive Leader of Strategic Data Management and Analytics. But I'm also the Editorial Board Chair and Visionary Co-Founder of the CDO magazine. Welcome to our CDAO interview series, and today I have the great privilege and honor of interviewing Ritesh Khire, who is VP of Science at 8451, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Kroger Company. Ritesh, thank you for joining me today on the interview.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's a really an honor to be here.
What are you learning? What have you learned when you've deployed pricing and promotion beyond we can serve the customer and we can do it profitably as an organization? What other, insights emerged from this work that you've been involved in?
So I think, I don't want to minimize the human element. I started mentioning that previously, I'll continue that. There is a time in which we have to make sure we get people along the journey. And without that, this great science stays to be a great science, but doesn't really make an impact. And to me, that was a big learning to make sure, I spoke the language of mixed integer nonlinear programming, stochastic optimization, multi-arm banded, and reinforcement learning. And when I started speaking of that, there were, yes. So I think the biggest journey for me, biggest learning was how do we get, what was interesting is people were willing to partner. I've worked with category manager and sales planner and display planners and ad planners, and they are willing to partner. We have to meet them in the middle. I think me as the AI, don't want to call myself expert here, but at least say practitioner. I think what I've learned is meet the customer in the middle, start small, but try to get a win as quickly as possible. There is that does a lot of things. One is you start getting quick buy-in. Everyone wants a win. And the quicker we get, the way I would call it a resistance scale, the resistance scale that becomes less and less, right? To the point where now, and I'm going to quote this, phrase, which is, you get a seat at the table. Now you don't have to sell. It's more like, hey, is that a new idea you want to try? Let's try it. Right. As opposed to before, tell me why you think you know better than,
Yeah. Why are you telling me 42? Why is that the number? Back it up.
And I think that is the biggest one. The other one that I want to make sure people understand, we cannot ignore technology. All these great sciences need to be injected. And there is a technology that exists. And then, of course, there is a technology upgrade curve, right? We got to make sure we are on that curve and we are following that curve. At some point, influencing the rapid speed up of that curve. But we cannot ignore that. You cannot have a science that current technology cannot absorb. And I want to emphasize that. And the last piece, and I think you will appreciate this and everyone, which is these are done by not just by AI experts. It takes a village. It takes product people, engineers, business analysts, users, the store managers, the store, sorry about that. The store managers, it takes a village. And I think getting that people all along is that element. I want to make sure I capture it.
That's really powerful. As you think about the role that you have and the function that you perform for 8451 as it meets its stakeholders, its customers, its partners in their business journey, can you just tell us, what do you feel the calling is? I get a sense from you that you're called to do this work. So can you illuminate a little bit on, for you, what that calling really is?
Yeah. So I think it's a good question, and thanks for asking that. Because one of the things I also want to do through this interview is really invite AI experts to join us in this journey.
Mm.
And so when we think about retail, right, and especially grocery retail, you are really talking about how people eat. And I want to emphasize, it's a serious business. Like, you can't get it wrong, because you're not talking about what is the next fancy electronic gadget I'm going to get. You're talking about how my kids eat,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I always get excited that sort of what I'm doing. And I talked about sort of the multi-objective optimization and Pareto frontier, where we can optimize multiple things at the same time. That to me is it's a calling in saying, like, how can we use AI for good, so that we can reach as many customers as possible. We can make things relevant to them in a business economic fashion. And to me, that is the biggest calling, like, really, uh, 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 serve people. Really, we have customer first, but what that means is, uh, how can we make business decisions that never hurts customer? And I think that to me is the biggest calling here. And we just talked about price and promotion. There is whole ton of, how do we minimize waste, and like, there is whole ton of other things that we can go into some other time. But like, how people eat, and everyone, whether you are above poverty line, below poverty line, where you are in your economic curve, how do we make sure everyone has the best food on their table, is sort of the calling here. And I think that is great. And I hope, I would like to communicate through this interview to sort of if I were to say, the upcoming class of AI ML experts and graduates to join us. So.
Well, you may have converted one here. I think I might go back and get a degree in statistics and AI and come join the team. The mission is amazing, and I'm really excited. I knew I would be, but by this interview and the passion that you've shared, and also the passion that you've represented, which is the passion of 8451, to change lives through the science that you're doing, not just for Kroger and its feeding mission, but also for all the other stakeholders who could benefit by their relationships with your organization. I guess the last question I have for you is kind of a crystal ball oriented one. And this interview could go on for quite some time, and I would like to invite you back. There's a number of other themes that have come out that I would like to just explore with you, that I think our readers and our viewers would really benefit from hearing. The mission of the publication, as I conceived it and collaborated with Steve to create it, is to educate the non-technical C-suite executive on the benefits and the impacts and the opportunities that this particular area of data and analytics really hold or portend for the success of the organization of the future. And I think you guys are doing just a fascinating job of making that promise real. And I think this interview has really helped to provide insight for folks that really need to understand why their organization should invest, how and where. I think you've also given a lot of insight into those up and coming folks, as you mentioned, that 8451 might be a great place to consider changing the way the world works through their expertise and passion around data and analytics. But as we wrap up, I think I'd like to have you just prognosticate for a moment into your crystal ball of the future. And I won't push you too far out. Let's just say if we looked at the year 2030, which is 8 years, a little bit less than 8 years out ahead of us, what do you see in your crystal ball going out in that trajectory that this science is going to be bringing as table stakes to the organizations that are succeeding in 2030? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so Mark, it's a great question. After studying forecasting and predictions, one thing I've learned is prediction is hard, especially of the future. So having said that, let me at least, tell you where I think, we had one sort of, the pandemic as an event, and that has changed us, and that has caused quite a bit. I think there are certain things that have sort of the journey that we have been on. I think that that will continue. So, for example, things will be more personalized. There's going to be more connected ecosystems, whether you want to call it Internet of Things or things like that, or I make it more real here. The e-commerce, the real world and a virtual world being merging, where the e-com and the day-to-day brick and mortar, sort of what in retail industry, what we call the omni-channel view, if you will. I think that is just going to be a table stake. I think there is, and this is something we can get into later. There is going to be, of course, you see the focus on privacy, and fairness and equity. And I think AI will play a big role in solving some of those problems. I know those are sort of the challenges of future, and I can clearly see AI, machine learning, solving that. And I want to be hopeful in saying, like, we as society and AI expert will essentially use the sciences to make people's life even better. And I think I want to, you said this is the last question. I want to end with that hopeful note that, that is what I want to see, and I would like to see. Maybe that's one and the same here. But I think we are just getting started on the AI machine learning journey. I think it's going to be pretty much every part. Like I said, the connected Internet of Things, the things connecting, and I think it's going to be really exciting.
Well, I don't even think I can add anything to that. I think you've put a good capstone on our discussion. And as I said offline from this interview, I'd like to follow up with you on a few other themes. You touched on data and bias in data and equity and inclusion, and there's some really important aspects of that I think power what you're talking about. I am Mark Johnson again. I'm the editorial board chair for CDO Magazine and the visionary co-founder of the publication. Exciting to see where we've come in 2 short years with the magazine. And I've had the great pleasure today of interviewing Ritesh Khire, who leads science at 8451, a part of Kroger. Ritesh, thank you so much for the time that you've spent with us today in this interview. I hope you'll come back again.
Absolutely, Mark. And I really enjoyed this conversation. So tell me when, and we'll talk.
You'll be there. Oh, great. Well, I'm going to hold you to that, and I know that Nikki will help me there. For our viewers, if you'd like to view other great interviews similar to this, please go to cdomagazine.tech, where you'll find them, along with other white papers that are being published. And again, our objective with this interview series and with everything that we publish on the site is to help educate the non-technical C-suite executive to really understand the promise, the value, and the sheer necessity of embracing and supporting the change management. I think you mentioned this, the human change management journey, and the investments that are necessary to make the maximum return and impact on these approaches, data analytics, and the technology that goes along with it. So thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed the interview.
Thank you.